Hi, this is Ed Tane McGlasson, and welcome to our podcast. This week, we're going to talk about standing as a father by asking your kids for forgiveness and how powerful that really is, and how that models to your kids a way that they can ask for forgiveness in their own story. So, many of you have known, we've had a lot of news on recently, but many of you know that I played in the National Football League. I got to play 5 years. And we did take a knee for things, but we did it at the 50-yard line. We did it to pray together. Matter of fact, the cameras are turned off, and they don't see all those players in the middle of the field that grab arms and link and pray. We got to start that. George Martin and I and Bill Courier and the New York Giants, we go to the 50-yard line to take a knee, but to pray. So taking a knee for prayer is awesome. But taking a knee and not standing for the national anthem, it's hit all people all kinds of ways. For me, who lost my dad as was a military hero at 400 miles an hour, he had a choice to make in 1956 on May the 29th to either try to bail out and save his life. The problem was his Fury 3 jet was heading towards the beaches in Santa Cruz, and he had to make a life and death choice at 400 miles an hour, either to save his life and bail out or to ride the plane in to save the life of the people on the beach. Well, as you know my story, that's exactly what my dad did. So I don't think that these guys taking a knee on the sideline, although that is not an appropriate place in my opinion, they're not taking a knee against my dad. But I wonder how many of those guys taking a knee, or maybe those fathers out there who are stuck in their own family stories, or maybe not a part of the story of their kids, have taken a knee when they didn't stand up as a father they needed to be. That produces a wound inside of us when our dads aren't present or they're not there in our story. What would have happened if my dad wouldn't have stood up that day? There would have been people who would have lost their life. So I think that God's put inside of every single one of us, male or female, that we're wired in such a way that when we choose to stand for things, we can change the world. We can change the life of our kids, our friends, our family, our churches, our synagogues, our world, by taking stand for things and putting our life on the line for something. That's a powerful thing to do. And so, I want to talk to you today about the way you can take a stand as a dad or a mom, if you're listening to this, for the sake of your kids' futures. Because the truth of the matter is your kids will learn to forgive by the way you model forgiveness to them. And it's not just so much about you forgiving your kids, which is kind of that one place. That doesn't take much humility. But I'm talking about learning to ask for forgiveness. So who taught you about that? I don't know about you. I don't like to admit that I'm wrong. I don't know about you. I definitely don't like that, especially not me. And how is the culture of forgiveness and asking for forgiveness in your own family story? Because all of us have been touched even by divorce. And divorce isn't about this person doesn't just work for me. Divorce is always about bitterness. Or sometimes it's about abuse. But even abuse comes from people that are bitter in their life, who have not learned how to forgive in their life. I mean, what would change in your story with your spouse if there was nothing in between you two and you really learned to forgive one another from the deepest part of who you are? Would it change your marriage right now? How about your kids? And so if you're a dad and you're watching this, or you want to be a dad one day, how good are you at asking your kids for forgiveness? I remember understanding this, beginning to understand this as a young dad. And I was watching my kids fight one day. You ever have those moments where you just want peace and quiet and you go out there and try to get them to stop screaming? And then you realize, anyway, I did as a dad, that my kids are fighting the same way that I have fought in front of them. And sometimes they're asking for forgiveness and humbling themselves Sometimes the same way. Or when I don't do it and I want to be right all the time, can it cause our kids to want to be right? Well, I think so. See, listen, beloved, there's no way for healing to happen in your family unless the first person decides to be humble. Moms do this all the time, but what about when a dad humbles himself? Humility wasn't something I was good at in my family. I don't know about you. We all come from broken families and broken patterns in our life. And, my mom and my stepdad, who kind of stood up for me, as a young dad, when, I didn't have a father in my story. But, I remember my mom. My mom, she was my biggest fan. She's dancing with Jesus in heaven right now. She loved me in so many ways. But when I hurt her, or I didn't do something she wanted me to do, she would get so mad that she would actually use these words. That's it. I've had it up to here, and I'm throwing you out of the family. And I'd look at her was like, what? I remember in the first beginning, she just threw me out of the family. And I knew that she really wasn't mean forever. And so I learned as a teenager to kind of pack my bag, walk out the front door, and take off and walk around the block. And I learned to especially just kind of hesitate so that my mom would suffer, because when I left, she was going, oh my gosh, what have I done? And she would do it to me, my sister Cindy and Daniel. Shan was always too perfect. But anyway, we all had this thing where mom was like, I've had it. You are out of the family. I mean, she was dramatic. She was creative. And she would just, use those words. And who did she learn that from, by the way? I remember one day, watching her on the phone, and she was mad at her mom. And she took the phone receiver and she slammed it. Wham, 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 wham. Does this sound like I'm hanging up? Bam. And if she didn't like something her mom said, she was hung up on. Well, where did she learn that from? Where her mom used to do the same thing to her. My dear old sweet grandma. She said, does this sound like I'm hanging up? Bam. And then she would just slam the phone down. Well, we learn those patterns from our parents. That's why it's so important to model the right kind of things. My stepdad, I don't know that he, learned much about forgiveness from the Navy. They don't have much sensitivity training in the Navy. The command and control, it's my way or the highway. Have you heard those words before if you were in a military family? And he struggled because his dad was a hard Cajun guy. And I remember him telling me stories that his dad wouldn't let him ever be weak, because weakness meant for a man that somebody could take advantage of him, and that a man's man is always right and never shows weakness. Well, guess what? We're pretty broken that way. That doesn't bring much healing either. So it was hard when I would say, hey, Dad, I need to talk to you about something. And say, Dad, when you did this really hurt. And he would just kind of look at me and get puzzled and just go, well, oh, son of a gun, son. And he didn't know, because he never had a dad who looked at him and said, son, I really hurt you. Would you forgive me for that? You know how powerful those words are, beloved, when we choose to forgive somebody and say, will you forgive me? That has great power when we do that. In the blog below, after I'm finished this audio portion, I give you steps to kind of work through and how you can really work that out with your kids. But, even after Jesus came into my life, I had to learn this new way of forgiveness, because we all have this kind of eye for an eye kind of deal, right? We learn that. And the Bible says that Jesus said, you've heard about this eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, but I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil, but if anyone slaps you, on your cheek, well, give him the other cheek. Jesus came to teach us how to not be eye for an eye. But I learned that, it's like I wouldn't even forgive somebody if, let's say, I was really believed that they were completely serious and they would never do it again. Have you ever used those words? Will forgive you as long as you never do this again. Well, we're not Superman. There's no S on our chest. We're not Superwoman. We're born human. We're frail, and there's times where we're going to blow it. I remember, it's a church pastor. You think, oh, pastors, they're always really, really good at forgiveness. Well, let me tell you, I blew it, in that arena. After a pastor, you deal with some pretty hurting people that hurt other people in the church. And I thought, I got to get better at forgiveness. So I was at the driving range one day hitting golf balls, and I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll grab a golf ball and I'll write that person's name on it that I just don't really like right now because of the way they're hurting other people, or maybe the way they're hurting me and talking about me. And so I would write their name on the ball and I'd put them up there on the tee and grab my driver and I'd knock the 8G double hockey sticks out of that ball and hit it as far away as I could. And I really thought that was forgiveness. Well, God has a way of teaching us. And a week later, I go to the range, and the range master gives me my bucket of balls, and right on top, the last ball rolls out of the ball machine right into my thing, and it was somebody's name on the ball that I wrote. And I realized that I'd not really forgiven him. I sort of dismissed him, but even when I thought about him, when I grabbed that ball, I still had the hurt associated with it. And not that hurt always goes away, but it was always like, I just don't want to have anything to do with him. Well, that's not forgiveness, beloved. That's sort of, I'll put it out of my mind, or I'm sorry for that. But forgiveness is not about getting even. Forgiveness is about giving mercy to somebody because of what God has done for you. We talked about that in the last podcast. And see, Jesus came to give us a whole new way. He even gave us a promise. He was basically saying, you don't have to die bitter, hating other people. You can have a profound effect on the future, not only of the world, but, right there in your family by asking for forgiveness with humility. It'll affect your kids. And guess what? Your grandkids. And Hebrews gives us a promise and a warning in chapter 12, verse 15. See to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it many have become defiled. When we don't forgive, bitterness grows in our heart. But when our children don't learn how to forgive us, bitterness grows towards us. So what's the quickest way? I'll talk to you in the blog below, but it's going to them, humbling yourself, and asking for forgiveness. I had to learn a whole new way. Matter of fact, Dad, you get to be the one to set the culture of forgiveness. If you're a single mom, the same way. What you model, what you sow into your kids is what you'll receive. I hope this has been a blessing to you. Enjoy my blog below. And remember, the Father loves you, and He sent His Son to let you know. God bless you. I hope that Time with My Father audio blog has been a blessing to you today. I would love to hear back from you and how this has touched you. You might have other questions. Could you include them in the comment section of our website? It would help us tremendously focus on future blogs and meeting the needs that people are asking. Also, if you've not signed up for our daily Time with My Father devotional, you can sign up on our webpage as well. It's a free gift for you. You can go to blessingofthefather.com to sign up. It's free. We have designed this daily devotion to help connect you to the same voice that Jesus listened to every day, the voice of His Father. As a matter of fact, Jesus said that He was only able to do and to speak the things that His Father spoke to Him that day. He had this amazing relationship that all the religious leaders around even one day say, show us the Father, that will be enough for us. Because Jesus came and lived His life from boyhood to manhood and to Savior through the love and revelation of His Father's voice. So if you want to hear from the Father in your own story in a better way, sign up today. And remember, the Father loves you and sent His Son to let you know.